It's a wonderful contrast, yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a revolution in a teacup, you know. Yeah.
So, Ms. Pounder, thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with us.
It's my pleasure.
Personally very much appreciate it.
Thanks.
So let's get started with where we expect to get started. You are a wildly successful actor. You've had success from Avatar to the NCIS series in your career. You beautifully restore homes around the country.
Thank you.
That I genuinely enjoy that.
Oh, thanks.
And you are a very well-respected art collector. Does it just come naturally to excel in other forms?
Well, I don't know about everybody else, but for me it came fairly naturally, and it kind of was hand in hand. Interiors. My mother bought a house for $27,000 and made all of her children paint and fix it up for the summer so that we could have money to go to school.
Oh, wow.
Lessons learned, because it wasn't as if, oh, paint. I said, no, 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 no. Get the corners, get that. And so an attention to detail started very, very young. I wanted to be an artist, a visual artist in the beginning, and I had this conflict with wanting to be an actor. I had a mentor, Stella Curran. I always give kudos to her because she said, well, Carol, acting's for young people. As long as you have your hands and your eyes, you can be an artist. And so I said, well, then I'll do the first half of my life as an actor and then the second half of my life as an artist. Well, of course, it doesn't really all fall together like that.
Right.
I mean, acting took a long time to manifest itself as a working person, and then all of a sudden it was there. And it was there relentlessly for, what, now 45 years straight. So I haven't stopped acting professionally. And while I was doing that, I started to introduce my friends who were artists to people who did movies, to people who became chefs. So immediately there was a kind of, you ought to know so-and-so, and she ought to know you, and he can put that up on your wall of your restaurant. And
right.
We had this wonderful sort of symbiotic activity going on within the arts. And so that's really how I started and how I continued.
Does your acting and your experience through the career so far, does that influence how you interact and approach with and pick art?
No. It's not the same, except in the sense that when you see the work downstairs, you will know that I'm interested in storytelling. And you can see it in almost every single painting that there's a story to be told. And it's not particularly complicated because there is strong emotion in almost all of the works. And so that is obviously my attraction, where I see something that speaks to me and I can literally almost feel the story.
Right.
And that's what makes it, I think, really perfect for the type of audience that sees my work.
And is that what about the pieces that you select? That what is it about those pieces that makes you say, this is it? Like, I have to, like, this is the story. I have to have it. I get that tingle down my spine.
Well, I remember my late husband saying to me, I'm only married to one woman. Look at all these women in here. And I tend to gravitate to the female subject, and I feel as if the emotion of the painting that I'm seeing gives me a story that I can tell. And I can actually translate it even into characters that I've played.
Right.
I've even gathered strength from paintings. Like, there's an incredible painting of Harriet Tubman, and it's a mean painting because she's standing over a man with a gun, and she's basically saying, if you don't get up and get us north, I will shoot you myself.
Right.
And you can see it in her face. And I just went, I just have to take that home. So there is a moment that I connect that's deeply personal.
What was the motivation in bringing, or if it wasn't a motivation, what was the reason for bringing this collection to the Wright here in Detroit?
Well, obviously Neil Barclay. And I'm not saying that just because he's in the room. But obviously, I had a relationship with Neil Barclay in New Orleans. I knew him then when he ran another institution, and he introduced the unusual. And I was somewhat fascinated by that. And when he came here, I decided that this was a great place to start a completely different phase of my collection, because I'd been talking about, I don't want it to end up in a basement. I don't want it to be part of my will that ends up in the basement of a museum and that gets trotted out Black History Month or a particular happening, and then it's like, oh, wouldn't it be appropriate if we went and got a couple of those paintings?
Right.
I wanted the idea that this was living matter, and it could be seen now, and it could travel, and other people could see it, be inspired by it, take a look at how we looked back then and what we're doing now and what the future holds for us. Within the collection, all three of those things exist. There's the historic, there's the present, and there's the future.
So why title the collection Queen?
Did you see all those beautiful women? Have you seen them?
Oh yeah, I have. I see the Queen.
Yeah. I think most people will understand that I'm not talking about a crown.
Right.
I'm talking about survival. I'm talking about tradition. I'm talking about making it. I'm talking about breathing, living it. And I think each individual character that you see tells you something. There's a wonderful portrait of Beloved, and she's a raspy, nasty little girl. She's mean-spirited, and yet the twinkle in her eye, and it's the strength of her body that just says, I'm here, damn it. And it was a perfect name for this particular painting by Daniel Jupiter.
So with that said, is it difficult, because generally speaking, when people hear art collector, art collection, it sounds like a millionaire's club game.
Yes.
Is that the case? How would you suggest someone
Well, it can be. It can be
approach that?
No. There are definitely two different factions. There is a millionaire's game, particularly now, and particularly within Black art, where there is a race to gather up, you don't even know their names. I've actually been to art fairs where simply because the subject matter is Black, that somebody insists on having it, they don't know the name of the artist, they don't know anything about them, but it is perhaps our time in visual arts. And so now there's a huge momentum to get Black art into museums, which had not been collecting prior. And so now there's this sort of like, where do you start?
Right.
And if you're in a bit of a hurry, then what museums are trying to do is create the sense of who this artist is, give him a sense of place and what he paints and what his emotion is, etc. So this is something that's happening. I collect from a completely different place. I collect seeing myself reflected in a painting. I collect because of a certain type of color, thickness, pastel, the materials used. I've spent a lot of time in Africa, and I am amazed at the materials that are used, because that's the materials that they have,
Right.
and what they create from it. And it's just opened my brain to what creativity can truly be.
So, as a woman of the diaspora, how difficult is it to get a collection put into a gallery that when it is outside of Black History Month, when it is just...
I would imagine that up until a few years ago, maybe even last year, that it was really tough. there's a sort of a parallel universe that's living. Obviously, they're African-American museums. They're museums of the diaspora, so this is what they do. And they have not been fully supported. They have not been fully appreciated until someone else has said, my God, that's amazing. And then now they're all running behind like, I want that amazing thing as well.
Right.
It's kind of human nature, and I try not to judge it too much.
As people experience this collection, what conversations do you hope are sparked? What kind of questions do you want people to ask?
It's a lovely question, because I think the broadness of it will sort of make people curious. One, there is somewhat a bit of a history involved in it. I mean, our history. And to see those characters brought to life within a painting is pretty fascinating in terms of like, who are they? Where did they come from? Oh, I might only know this corner of American Black history, but there's also the Caribbean Black history. There's the African Black history. And they're all the little places in between where we have found ourselves, made a living and made an impact and made a difference. And so even within the 52 works that are downstairs, there is something that, if you ask a simple question, the history of it will come to life.
Now that this is, you've said there's kind of a rat race to gather up.
There's a little bit, yeah.
Just Black and brown art. What is it like when you see artists like Kehinde, who did the Obama portraits, doing something like the Obama portraits, which is inherently a historical thing by virtue of doing a presidential portrait? As an artist, you're going down in history.
Yes.
So what does that mean to you, and how do you feel about this, I guess, emergence, if you will?
Well, I'm definitely gushing proud mama number 50. I've known Kehinde since he was on his way to the Studio Museum of Harlem. I commissioned some paintings for him for that summer so that he could get to the Studio Museum of Harlem.
Oh, wow.
So this is a long history. And I also went, when he opened up his residency in Senegal, I went as one of the guinea pigs, just stay there for a couple of weeks and see what works and what doesn't. We've had a long friendship. And so to actually in your lifetime see someone, and this is a rare thing, artists, there are thousands of us, but we do not always get to go all the way full circle top where you're now turning yourself around and helping others.
Right.
This is a tremendous thing that he's been able to accomplish. And I couldn't be prouder.
So finally, what do you want your legacy in this world of art collecting and art to be?
Oh, it's a lovely question. This is my answer. One of the things that I often worry about is that you don't say it's beautiful until somebody else says it's beautiful. And I want my legacy for those young people to learn from the very beginning that you can be critical of things that come from you. You can love this, you can not like that. I could like the way that woman walks. I like the way that man talks. I love the way he paints her hair, or all of those things, but that it comes from a place where you are the judge of it.
Right.
You say, oh man, I saw a painting today. It was amazing. Her this, her that, the color, as opposed to, well, Mrs. So-and-so said that this is a really important painting. I don't want that.
Well, I think you are definitely, if not already, opening a door and creating bridges to get to that point, because again, I'm excited to go look at what we're going to go look at, because this is really exciting. I have to say,
yes,
thank you, because when you bring your art to Detroit, you help elevate the city, and
thank you.
That is an indispensable thing. And on a personal note, I also look forward to being able to see a home in Detroit that has been touched by CCH
Yeah,
founder.
that's lovely. Yay!
I can't wait.
I'm coming.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Take a look around it. I don't know how the light's going to affect what you're seeing. But
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.